It's time once again to turn back the clock and take a look at Swindon from a time gone by. More Swindon Through the Years, comparing the images from the past with those of a modern Swindon. And this time we're turning back the clock to the 1990s. It was boom time for Swindon, expansion, conversion and improvements, all captured by the Swindon cable cameras for the weekly news programme This is Swindon. We now look back at some of those images, capturing a town in transition, frozen in time, in more Swindon Through the Years. Delving into the Swindon Cable Archive, we're turning back the clock to 1994. Another look at Swindon through the years. Here are some of the modern views of the building that was once home to the Swindon-based oil company Burmah Oil. The modern views show the building being used by the Nationwide Building Society. And although the occupants may have changed, the building remains much the same from the outside. The entrance has changed very little across the years, but our pictures from 1994 show something a little unusual. It was in 1994 that the entrance that we see today was being installed as part of the work for Burmah Oil. These offices are now known as Wakefield House, once Burmah Castrol House, and were actually built in 1972 as the headquarters for the Burmah Castrol Oil Company. For many years, Swindon had been the base for Burmah Oil, a large oil and petrochemical company with a fleet of garages right across the country. Our views show that work was underway to install a pair of Burmese legendary lions known as Guardians of the Temple, and reputed to be the only pair outside Burma. The images show refurbishment work taking place in 1994. The lions may have subsequently been swept away, but we can clearly still see the plinths on which they sat. With the popularity of working from home, it was recently announced that the Nationwide Building Society no longer needed Wakefield House. It'll be interesting to see what the future holds for this one-time important office building in Old Town. Part of the original site has already been redeveloped, and homes now stand on a large chunk of the former head office land, now known as Marlborough Park. At one time, it would have been inconceivable to think that homes would be built on this land just off Marlborough Road. But today, it provides a home to a thriving community. And once again shows how commercial property sites change and evolve across the years. Back in 1994, there were plans for this northwest corner of Swindon. This was to be the home of a brand new rail freight depot. Difficult to imagine as we look at the Greenfield Site just off the A420 Oxford Road. The plans were for a new rail freight connected depot. That's why the Swindon cable cameras were there taking these pictures. And it's an area that today shows the complete transformation of the site is complete. With a range of distribution warehouses, the area is known as Key Point and is virtually on the border between Wiltshire and Oxfordshire. The landscape helps mask the huge buildings. And today, although it is rail connected, it's hardly ever used. In fact, these views have also changed since the main line between Bristol and London was electrified. They show the rail junction with the Key Point depot. It had been hoped that rail would be an important carrier for many of the goods coming either into or out of the Key Point depot. But the rail traffic failed to materialise, and today everything is transported by road. There are no focal points to compare. The whole area has been completely transformed. Traditional farmland on the outskirts of town disappearing forever. The expensive rail connection shows rusty rails, whilst the thunder of lorries close by is constant. The pocket of land totally transformed, totally developed for a modern town. This was a familiar story in Swindon and repeated on a number of occasions. Greenfield sites, once farmland, converted for industrial use, factories and warehouses, replacing the traditional farm buildings and green fields. And even today, nearby expansion continues, with a new estate being built opposite the Gablecross police station. It's not an area that many people visit or are familiar with, but it does play an important part in Swindon's modern economy. It's just a shame that there are more lorries on the road than there needs to be, especially when it's rail connected. It's 1994 on the Blagrove estate and the home of Anchor Butter. The familiar brand of Anchor was synonymous with the Blagrove industrial estate in the 1980s. The brand of butter had a connection with Swindon, since it was announced that a multi-million-pound butter and cheese packing plant was to be built here back in 1978 and located here the following year. The depot supplied products across central and southern England and Wales. Today, the building still stands, but is no longer home to Anchor Butter. However, if you look closely at the building, you can still see where the familiar logo once sat. It eerily disappears with the passing of time. The building is now part of the Clearwater Business Park and is in fact known as the Anchor Business Centre. Anchor production and distribution was moved to Denmark when the company merged with the owners of Lurpak. Closure was announced in 2002 with the loss of 200 staff, ending a 21-year connection between Anchor and Swindon. Back then, the Swindon address appeared on packs of butter in supermarkets across the country, and the Swindon connection was there when the address appeared on the first UHT cream in an aerosol can, Squirty Cream, back in 1982. The 12-acre site was eventually sold off, and part of those buildings now house the appropriately named business centre. But for many people, it will always be the home of Anchor Butter. We'll have more Swindon Through the Years coming soon, but in the meantime, please do remember, like, comment and share. We'd like to hear your memories of a changing town. And look out, more Swindon Through the Years coming soon.